After a 6-1 blitzing of Leicester City, Spurs go into their final game of the season with Champions League football secured for a second successive season and second place firmly consolidated. We discuss Thursday's huge win and preview our final game of the season to come against Hull City in this week's e-Spurs Extra Time Special.
Come on, you Spurs! 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 Tottenham!
Hi guys, welcome back for yet another hour of talking all things Tottenham Hotspur. Please don't forget you can subscribe to the show via iTunes or Acast and get every brand new episode direct as it's released. You can of course follow us across all the usual social media platforms. We're on Twitter and Instagram at e_Spurs. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/e-Spurs page. We're also on YouTube, Pinterest and Tumblr. And for all the links to all e-Spurs platforms, you can head to our website of www.e-Spurs.com. On the e-Spurs podcast tonight, we'll be discussing the thrashing at the King Power. We'll be taking your questions for our panel, and we will be previewing our final game of the season to come this coming Sunday away at Hull. Before we talk all things Spurs tonight, let's introduce the chaps taking us through the next hour. I'm pleased to say, back on the show by popular demand, we've got Mr. John Mannings. John, how are you doing?
I was alright until you put that kind of pressure on me, Rick.
Sorry. Just giving the public what they want, John. Giving the public what they want. I'm pleased to say we've also got back on the show Ian Gunn. Ian, how you doing?
Very well, boys. Thanks for having me back on the show.
Pleasure, Ian, pleasure. And finally, last but not least, we've got Jason McGovern at around 2 a.m. in Thailand joining us. Jace, how you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. And it was good to be up at 2 a.m. yesterday morning as well.
I bet it was. I bet there was some noise being created. Well, let's discuss it. Let's come to you first, John. There may have been an argument that Spurs could well have been possibly on the beach for this game, but by God, what a professional performance, John.
Yeah, it was superb, to be fair. I think, you know, there was always that trouble or potential trouble going into the game where, you know, that they could have been on the beach and, you know, obviously talking about weather. First of all, there was a hurricane and then the sun came out in Leicester last night. So if you're talking from that point of view, it worked out all right. It was a great performance, blinding team performance, really, apart from the guy at right wing back. I can't remember his name. But, yeah, everyone played pretty well, I thought, and it was a thoroughly enjoyable evening.
It was. And John, just on the game itself, I mean, the performance, like you've just said there, for a team that we could supposedly be on the beach because there wasn't much to play for, just who impressed you in that? Obviously, Kane probably being the obvious player, but anyone else really stand out for you?
Yeah, I think the two in the middle, Wanyama and Dembele, were immense. I mean, there was that bit in the second half where Wanyama just absolutely takes the piss out of I think it was Ndidi, where he just goes around him.
Left him for dead.
Yeah, it was just fantastic. Wanyama and Dembele have just when they play together, like compare this to the West Ham away game. You know, when them two are together, they're just so incredible. They work so well together, and they give the team, you know, Victor gives the team the platform to build from, and Dembele, you know, helps instigate the attacks. And yeah, they were fantastic. I think Davies looked good. Vertonghen was good. Toby was good. You know, everyone pretty much. Although Lloris had a bit of a nightmare for the goal, but no, I was thoroughly impressed with everyone, to be honest. Apart from, I don't want to like singling our players out.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But I felt so sorry for Moussa Sissoko.
He looked
there was 2 or 3
shot
times.
To bits, didn't he, John? Confidence. He looks just shot to bits.
I think that's all it is, because he's like, you know, we discussed before. Yep. I remember Jay saying last summer, you don't get 50 caps for France if you're a bad player. He's clearly a player, but the fundamentals he weren't getting right against Leicester. You know, there was a couple of times where the ball was played out to him on the right hand side and he miscontrols it and gives away a throw. And even right at the beginning of the game, there was a couple of opportunities for him to move forward with the ball. He received the ball from Alderweireld twice and didn't even look forward. He just gave it straight back to Toby, and you just feel sorry for him. Yeah. You know, apart from Potts giving him a cuddle, I don't know what there is really we can do for the boy. I think he's gone, to be honest with you, and I think he knows it.
Yeah, it's one of those where I think because of how good the team is, coming to you, Jace, it's obvious when certain players aren't up to the case or up to the game itself. But people that are up to the case is Harry Kane, Jace. He went into the game 2 goals behind Lukaku on this golden boot. Now, Lukaku probably going to bed early, probably thought, you know, I'll be comfortably in the lead when I wait back up. And yet Kane scores 4 and moves ahead of him. Just 4 goals, Jace, away from home.
Yeah, not too bad a performance from him, was it? He missed a good chance to get a fifth one as well. It was excellent performance. It was his all-round play as well last night. It wasn't just the 4 goals he scored. I mean, his hold-up play at times, the way he battled. It was a lovely early ball through to Son, and it was just a 10 out of 10 performance from him once again. And quite why Leicester City want to give him so much stick because he was there on loan. Well, it probably sums up Leicester City's mentality, but he made them pay for their jibes, and by the end of the evening, I don't think they'd even stopped bothering to boo him because they just realised how embarrassed it was looking. But excellent performance from Harry Boy, and great if he can get that golden boot. And with Lukaku and Sanchez playing against each other, Everton are such a poor side away from home against those bigger clubs that I can't see Everton scoring twice, let alone Lukaku, and I'd be astonished if Sanchez got a hat-trick. So I think he's probably got enough for that golden boot already, but let's hope he can fill his boots and get another few goals at Hull as well.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And coming to you, Ian, it's just incredible, the Kane stats out there. Despite playing 7 games fewer than Lukaku, been out for 3 months, like we've said, the 2 goals ahead, but 51 goals in his last 58 Premier League appearances. Is he just a 3-season wonder?
I think Jason nailed it. I think he's a 1-decade wonder. I think we've been really lucky to see the emergence of Harry Kane as a genuine world superstar.
He has been. I mean, it has been incredible. And Ian, for you, the game itself, I know you was there last night. Who else stood out for you? I mean, Son at the moment is also on fire, isn't he?
Yeah, I'm going to say all of them stood out for me. Even the bloke at right wing back who I think grew into the game in the second half, and I think didn't he have a hand or 2 in a couple of the later goals. So I couldn't single anyone out. It was just a tour de force from all the starting 11, and then there was that little Lesniak who came on and he immediately endeared himself to the Spurs fan by crunching into their left back, and like he'd always been there. And he also had a little cameo and a good little assist for one of the goals as well. So all in all, a very, very good night at the office for us.
Problem with Lesniak is I think he's already linked now, isn't he, with a move to Manchester as well. Well,
it's funny you say that, Jason. I mean, I'm surprised Eric Dyer started, considering that the Sun sold him on an undisclosed fee in the morning to Man United. I mean, it's quite funny, isn't it? I mean, if we're going to listen to the papers, we've got no team for Sunday.
Well, I mean, in fairness to the Sun, I mean, Harry Kane went to Manchester last summer as well, didn't he, with Lloris? So obviously Man United must have loaned Harry Kane back to us for the season. And considering how poor they've been, it's been a fantastic loan deal, and hopefully Eric Dyer will be the same. They'll buy him and loan him back to us like they've done with Lloris and Kane.
Oh dear, it's crazy. And coming back around to you, John, Heung-min Son, he's now scored 13 goals. Well, he's now scored or assisted in 13 goals in his last 12 games. Highest scoring season by a South Korean player in Europe. Again, he's more than just a backup, isn't he, John?
He certainly is. I think if it wasn't for Son's form, we would have gone back to 3-4-3 a little while ago, before the last game. Because, there's been times where, he can be frustrating. He went through one-on-one against United and it hit straight at the keeper. He went through one-on-one against Leicester and blazed it over. But if he weren't on this kind of run, we would have been 3-4-3 and it would have been Dele, Eriksen and Kane as the front three. But Son's basically become undroppable, I would say.
Yeah.
I think he's been one of them players who was really... He is the epitome of second season syndrome, or whatever you want to call it, whereby a player will come into a new league and struggle for the first one and then really smash it in the second one. And that's, if you think the amount of plaudits and credit that's been chucked at Dele Alli this season, Son's scored the same amount of goals as Dele
20,
now.
Yeah, Tommy's crazy.
21. So
21,
if you think about it like that, no one's talking about Son being a 60, 70 million pound target for anyone. But for my money, at the age he's at, 23, 24, he could go on to be, a real asset for us and also be worth a lot of money should we decide to sell. Although, obviously, we hope we don't. We want to keep him as long as we can. But,
of course, yeah.
Yeah, he was great last night. I thought he recovered from his, he knew he made a mistake by putting it over and not squaring it. And he made up for it shortly after, and confidence just grew in him minute by minute towards the end of the game. And, yeah, he was superb. It's
funny you say that, John, because he's one of those players that you would argue that anyone outside the top 6, he'd probably be a regular in their team. He would be one of their established players. They would probably, promote him as one of, their key players. But, we're now in a position with Spurs where we have 3 players over that 20-plus goal mark in Kane, Ali and Son. It's just an incredible achievement. And coming back to you, Jace, I mean, at the moment, you've got to say, the form, when you consider we're without the likes of, let me just remind you, we're without the likes of Rose, Walker, Lamella, Ericsson, Trippier and Winks to come back into that squad. It's just frightening, isn't it?
Yeah, it struck me, didn't it, that Ericsson's our player of the season, and yet the first time he doesn't play, we go and score 6. So I would imagine there's one of our most notorious listeners out there will have noticed that last night. But no, I mean, the squad, I've said it time and time again this season, we haven't been given enough credit for the squad we've got when people say there's no depth and things like that to the squad. And there you go, we go and score 6 and you give 6 players out that aren't there. And all I've ever said was, in fairness, when people talk about how weak our bench has looked at times, when you've got 5 or 6 injuries week in, week out, your bench won't be as strong as 1 or 2 of the others. But, I've looked at the benches of some of those other teams in the top 6 of late, and you look at them and you think, Manchester City's bench, other than, say, Aguero on it, you look at it and you think it's a pretty average-looking bench at times. And we wax lyrical about all the other squads, and we ignore sometimes what's in front of us. And that squad has been outstanding this season. And, to do that, we didn't see... Probably Walker Peters may well have played if he wasn't off with the Under-20 World Cup, and there's Edwards is out there and Josh Onema's out there as well, so which is probably why Lesniak and Shashua was in the squad. But I've said it time and time again, our squad is a lot deeper than it's given credit for.
Coming back around to you, John, I mean, he seems to be saying a lot, Pochettino, about the maturity, John. Do you think he has learned? Because he is still, I think, like you said, he's still quite a young manager. He must have looked at that back in the last season and thought, it's just not good enough, isn't it, the way we finished. But hopefully, win on Sunday, there can be no regrets in terms of towards the end of the season, how we've performed, apart from that West Ham result, John.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the thing you can say about Pochettino is, year upon year, it's been a great 3 years under Poch for me. I know most probably agree. And the best thing and the most impressive thing about Pochettino, in my opinion, is the fact that everything he gets slated for, he fixes pretty much. So there was talk about him, first season it was he's too rigid, he's too stubborn. Then the second season he starts to tinker with formations and with players and moving. He moved Dyer around and you saw more of a plan B. Obviously, it was hard to have a plan B when you're relying on Soldado or Adebayor to come off the bench. But it is him who has who has brought these new players in and helped him silence those critics and be more flexible and change formations and change systems. And I think the most impressive thing for me this season, and I know we've said how much football Harry Kane has missed, but Harry Kane has scored more goals than we've conceded this season. I know that might it's quite a simple stat, whatever. He's got in the league, he's got 26 and we've conceded 25.
It is insane though, isn't it?
And I just think we've got so tight, and that's down to him. I know obviously Pochettino was a central defender. If I could just drop another stat, between 1992 and 2012, if you added all of our end of season goal differences together, in 20 years we managed a combined of plus 52. That's no joke.
And we're beating it, aren't we now? We're beating it.
And this season we're plus 54.
It's insane though, yeah.
That is incredible.
John, me and you are kind of from the same age generation watching Spurs, that kind of 80s, 90s. Is it not weird when I look at the table now and I'm seeing 54, I think we're on a wind-up. It's just, the thing is, is it just bizarre for you as well? I can't believe it.
It really is. It really is. And I tell you what, this season has taught me one thing: the mass media will have you believe that success is all about winning trophies. This season has warped my mind in some ways, and I can tell you now, I'm nearly 32. This is the most enjoyable season I can remember. When we won the cup in 91, we finished 10th. 99, we finished 14th. 08, we finished 11th. We were shite in the league.
It's a great point, though.
We had not much. We didn't have much to crow about whatsoever. And people can go, oh, but you've won nothing. Oh, Sky will keep banging on. Oh, these players need to win trophies. And I get where they're coming from. I understand it. But from a fan's point of view, honestly, I don't think this season could have been any better. And I think, obviously, another thing to consider is that if you are going to have a trophyless season, there's obviously different ways of achieving that.
Of course, yeah.
What I mean by that is you can break all kinds of records, finish second, finish above Arsenal for the first time in however long. You can win your last game in your stadium. You can make your fan base proud. Or you can go out of the Europa League qualifying to a team you can't pronounce. You can fight your fans every home game. You can move into a soulless bowl where a box of popcorn and a Coke will cost you 12 quid. You can sell your best player in January. Your biggest achievement could be beating a team that you're 40 points behind. And yeah, they've won the same amount of trophies as us this season.
I don't know what you're talking about, John.
I'm talking about West Ham, by the way, just in case no one picked up on that. But yeah, I mean, it just shows to me that you can have different trophyless season. From if you just say, "Oh, it's a trophyless season," it sounds bad.
Yeah.
This has not been a bad season. It's been incredible. I've loved every minute of it.
Indeed.
And the fact that we ain't even lost 2 games on the trot, I don't think. No. Not in the league, we haven't. And that's one thing you could say about Poch before, where it would happen in spates, and now it's not.
Jay's going to come to you. Leicester, the points they amassed last season to win the title, Jace, 81. When you consider Spurs were on 83, that would have been enough to win the title, Jace, 8 times over in the Premier League era. What do you make of that mind-blowing stat? That's just incredible, isn't it, Jace?
It is, but the sad thing is that it's the one year when it's not.
No.
That's all you can say. I mean, I think the most astonishing thing about all our points is that, you know, when we're looking at 12 or 15 points more than any other club over 2 years.
Yeah.
And yet in those 2 years, not just have we not won the title, we've never even been top of the league. And you scratch your head when you look at that. You think, how could we have never been top of the league in those 2 years when you've accumulated that many points? It's bizarre. But, you know, I mean, I said at the start of right back at the start of the season, I said all I want us to do is reach April still in a race, and I want us to beat our Premier League points record. And you look at it and you think we might get 2 or 3 points more than that, and we've absolutely blasted past that Premier League points record. And I mean, we could well finish with 86. I don't know if we'll get 86 against next season. None of us can be cocksure that we'll sit here with 86, 87 points next year, and you just hope that we do accumulate enough to finally get across that line. But there's absolutely nothing to be ashamed of in this season. And John's right. I said that earlier in the week, didn't I, after the other podcast? I think even without the trophy, I've loved every single minute of this season. Even the defeats we've had, okay, the West Ham one was a disappointing result, but you can lose a London derby, for God's sake. But
Jason, no one's turned us over in terms of like a huge result. We've only lost the game by the odd goals. We're not being beaten 4-5-0.
No, and with great respect, Rick, every single team will lose games in the course of it. Chelsea will still be saying, how the hell did we lose at home to Crystal Palace? Yep. Liverpool will be saying, how did we lose at home to Swansea? All teams will be saying at times, what stupid points there. You can't look back with any regret, and 83 points is a fantastic total, and I don't think too many people would have expected us to break that 80-point margin at the start of the season. So, and just one thing actually about the Leicester game,
yes,
we should actually say the fantastic support for all those people that went up there. The noise of the Spurs fans. It was fantastic to watch a game from Leicester City where you could hear fans singing rather than that awful, horrendous, happy, clappy noise that's worse than a vuvuzela at times. So it was just fantastic. And when they're singing at the start, we're waiting for you, Tottenham Hotspur, we're waiting for you. Wasn't we worth waiting for? They finally saw football, and they finally had fans singing in that ground. So, full credit to all the supporters that went up there.
Yeah, tremendous noise generated by the Spurs fans. And coming to you, Ian, another player, I mean, Dele Alli, we've spoken about him recently. Pochettino in his pre-match press conference kind of put out a reminder there and said, look, we took a risk on Dele. He's now a massive player for Spurs, one of the most important in England, but it shouldn't be forgotten who took that risk. Maybe just a reminder to me, in that Spurs were the ones out there that, whilst other clubs were maybe looking at him, the likes of Liverpool, the likes of maybe United, Spurs were ultimately the team that took that gamble and went for the player. What do you make of those quotes from Poch?
Yeah, I think that it just shows that every now and again you unearth a gem that comes to full fruition for you, and Dele Alli is definitely one of those. And
John, coming to you, should we he's kind of reiterated that point to Dele there, that Spurs were the club that ultimately took that gamble. Is that just a timely reminder to him, because he didn't in the week kind of assure Spurs fans that he's here long term, loves the manager, But obviously, as a player, I suppose he wants to reach the top, and hopefully that will be with Spurs, John. What do you make of recent kind of quotes from him?
Well, I think, like we said before, like with all the Kyle Walker stuff, don't want to go back over that.
No, of course not, yeah.
You don't know what's going on. You really don't. Like, he might have a really chirpy agent who's in his ear hole every 5 minutes. There's obviously a lot of mutual love there.
Of course, yeah.
And you just cannot have players or managers making promises to fans, because the last time a player stood in a post-match press conference, or in the tunnel rather, and said, "So, are you staying?" And the guy went, "I'm staying." And we all know what happened. I would rather a player not come out and say, "I'm staying," and then if they go, you hate them. You know it happens, because we've got that.
Yeah.
Sol Campbell is that hate figure for us, because he said he was staying, or obviously he went to Arsenal, but that didn't help, obviously. But when you come out and say, "I'm definitely doing this," or "I'm definitely doing that," and then things change, you don't know what goes on behind closed doors.
Coming to you, Jace. Again, we have seen a recent kind of spate of players being linked away from the club. I mean, my only argument has been, Jace, recently, that why would you think about a move away from Spurs? I would arguably say it's the place to be. Modern day thinking manager, players squad, there's such a togetherness there. Champions League again. Are we confident, Jace? What do you think? Can we hold on to our star players this summer?
I fully expect us to hang on to most of them. It looks like Walker, from all the reports and that, is on his way. I think there'll be lots of interest in our players, but as we saw at Southampton, Daniel Levy, you can see, has bought into Pochettino, and there's a mutual trust between the two. Yep. Pochettino left Southampton because he saw 3 or 4 players leaving each summer, and if you look at the track record of us since Keane and Berbatov left in 2008, we've only really sold 2 players that we didn't want to sell. One was Modric, and we had a fantastic bid from Chelsea that we actually turned down and sold him 12 months after that for a lesser fee. And then, Real Madrid come in with, £86 million. So
yeah.
For a player that's desperate to go, the fact that they're all under long-term contracts, it's definitely in our hands. And I think it's the natural progression anyway is to sell 1 or 2 players each summer. But I'd be stunned if we were to see the likes of Ali and Kane and Eric Dyer. I mean, I find that absolutely ridiculous that Manchester United think they'll just come and take him for 40 million. I mean, it's John Stones went to Manchester City for 50 million, for God's sake. So I'm quite calm about that. Tottenham will not sell 6 or 7 players this summer. They just won't do it.
No. I mean, and Pochettino afterwards the game, again, he said it's very clear that what we'll do is we'll keep our best players, and the ones we want to sell, we'll sell. I mean, I think he's been brutally honest all along, and like I say, there's no reason to distrust him. Ian, what's your take on it? Should we be concerned about summer upheaval?
Poch's views after the game were that he's had an assurance, or he seems to think he's got an assurance, that none of his best players or the players he wants to keep will go, and but those that aren't in his plans will be allowed to go. Yeah, I think what we do is if a silly bid comes in and it's a world transfer record, then Levy's got a decision to make, hasn't he?
He has indeed. And we're going to come back round to you, John. Anything else from the performance you want to highlight? I know we talked about Victor Wanyama, John. He has been consistent all season, hasn't he? I can't actually remember him having what I would consider to be a really poor game. I mean, how good has he been for the price we got him, John?
I think that's that will always enhance his reputation amongst football supporters, not just Tottenham fans. It just annoys me a little bit that his role out, it's not really been recognised that much outside of our own fan base, because he's been superb. He's been the glue that we missed at important times last season, and the calming influence in midfield that we missed in them games where we had the chance to go top last season a couple of times and we missed out. And I think it's just that little bit of how many times has Jason this season said, we missed a bit of gamecraft compared to last season? And
John, I've got to say as well, what about, John, in terms of his discipline? Because last season, I think the year before with Southampton, I think he got sent off 2 or 3 times. And this season, when he's been booked, he has managed to keep his head in the game and not do anything stupid as well, John.
I think the difference is, from what I can see, is that he's not doing it all on his own in Tottenham's midfield, and I don't think he feels under as much pressure. He's probably enjoying playing a bit more, and therefore he's less angry to start with, if that makes sense. You're going to have more of the ball playing for Tottenham than you are playing for Southampton. You're going to be chasing less. You're going to be, lunging in for the ball less, and I just think it's because he's playing in the better side. I just think that's the difference. But yeah, you're right, he was sent off 3 times last season, and you did wonder when he come in last summer, would it happen again? But honestly, I think it's because he's playing with better players, and he doesn't have to. You know, if you look at defensive midfielders or defenders and you ranked them on who made the most interceptions or tackles, then the defenders who play for the bottom 3 or 4 clubs are going to be top of that list. Because Toby Alderweireld's not going to be making as many tackles as Michael Keane because he's not being attacked as much. You know, and I think that's just what it is. I think, you know, he's been part of a squad which does a lot more attacking than defending, and I think it's as simple as that, really.
Yeah, I agree with you, John. It's a great point that outside of Tottenham, outside of Spurs fans, he really hasn't got much of a mention. And I'm absolutely stunned that he hasn't been, because, like you said there, every game this season he's had an impact on. He's been truly consistent all along. And I kind of come to you, Jace, just mentioning the youngsters and how Pochettino is promoting these through. Lesniak and Shashusha, hope I've pronounced that right, become 2 of 5 players that Pochettino has promoted into that first team alongside Winks, Cameron Carter-Vickers, Edwards, Walks and Harrison. Yes, they haven't all started, but again, Jace, that trust in youth, that promotion in youth, it's in full swing, isn't it, under Poch?
Well, we know he has that trust in youth, and it'll be the interesting thing to see next year what happens with Carter Vickers and Josh Onomah and that, because you think they are at a crossroads now where they need to be playing, particularly Josh Onomah. Hopefully they have a good time out of the World Cup. They come back with their reputations enhanced, and we can get playing time for. I don't particularly want to sell Josh Onomah before we really know if he's going to make it as a Premier League player. But, you know, I'd like to see him get a really good... I know Pochettino's not keen on sending them out on loan. He likes them around the squad. But, you know, I think let Onomah go and play good football at Bournemouth or somewhere like that next season, and let's see how good a player he is, because, you know, long term there is the doubt about Moussa Dembele's fitness, and I'm not saying Josh Onomah's ever going to be a Moussa Dembele, but we do need to, before we go out and spend 50-60 million replacing Moussa Dembele, it will be good to know if we can trust 1 or 2 of our younger players, and I think you'll only know that if they're playing Premier League football next year.
Yeah, it's a great point you say there, and also just picking up on the fact that Dembele at the moment is playing through the pain barrier. It's fantastic to see that commitment and loyalty to the team at the moment. Guys, we're going to go for a very quick break, and then we're going to come back to take some of the questions from tonight's panel.
Hello, and welcome to Loan Watch, a weekly update on the players currently on loan from White Hart Lane. With the season over for all our players on loan at clubs throughout the Football League, I will head straight to our players currently playing their football outside of England. In Italy, Federico Fazio played the full game as Roma defeated Juventus 3-1 at home to close the gap on the league leaders to 4 points. However, with only 2 matches remaining, Roma's chances of winning the Scudetto remain slim. In Germany, Nabil Bentaleb played 91 minutes as Schalke were held to a disappointing 1-1 draw at home to struggling Hamburg. Bentaleb did set up striker Gaudo Bergstaller to put the hosts 1-0 up, but the draw ends any hope Schalke had of qualifying for Europe. Over in France, Clinton NG was again an unused substitute as Marseille drew 1-1 away at Bordeaux. The result keeps Marseille in 5th, 1 place and 1 point ahead of their opponents, with 1 game left to play. Across the Atlantic, Anton Wakes was an unused substitute in Atlanta United's 1-1 draw at Portland Timbers, a result which saw Atlanta drop to 8th in the Eastern Conference. That's it for this week's edition of Loan Watch. I look forward to speaking to you again next week. Come on, you Spurs!
Hi guys, welcome back to the e-Spurs podcast. As always, we ask you to get in touch with us on a weekly basis. You can do that by tweeting our Twitter account of @e_Spurs, leaving your question with the hashtag eSpursPod. Okay, so let's ask some questions. Let's go to you first, John. We've got a question here from Helena at BirthdayGirl81 who says, did Thursday's win prove that we have definitely evolved as a team and as a club after last season's downfall in the last few games?
Yeah, I think, to be fair, I think, you know, we've partly answered that before. When you consider the stats in terms of, you know, like I said, Harry Kane scored more goals than we've conceded. And the fact that we've got 1 game to go and we've not, all right, unless we go to Hull and lose 5-1, then I think, you know, we have learnt lessons, and Pochettino has managed to do that and rectify problems that have been identified season upon season and get better. And, you know, I think in the last I think in the last 5 years we've finished 6th, 5th, 3rd, 2nd and 4th. But there's only one position we haven't finished, so let's hope it ain't 7th and it ends up being 1st. So
fingers crossed.
In 12 months' time, we'll obviously know the answer to that. But we're 100% heading in the right direction, and we've got the best man for the job in charge there.
Totally agree. And let's hope that we're preparing in 12 months for a different kind of parade, not just a Legends one. Fingers crossed. Let's come to you next, Jace. We've got a question here from Kerry Coys, and also Harry C asked a similar question. Harry Kane surely is the best striker in the league. What does the future hold for him, and will it remain at Tottenham? What do you think, Jace?
I think he'll certainly remain at Tottenham. I think he'll certainly be there when we go into the new stadium at the end of that season. And then it depends, if we've progressed as a football club by then. I think if we stay as we are at the moment, he'll definitely be there. I don't see any reason to move. He consistently says it himself. But there will come a time when that paycheck, we don't know what those players have been promised that their wages will be at the time of that new stadium. The fact that they signed such long deals, we don't know what trigger clauses are in those contracts, that they may well have a guaranteed wage increase in them anyway. And Daniel Levy, in fairness, looked after all the players last year based on their success. So I think there will come the time when he'll definitely want to win trophies, or the big one, if you like, the Premier League titles, and there'll be times when he wants to genuinely complete have an opportunity to win a Champions League, and there will come a time when he's worth, probably by then it'll be £200,000 a week. But I don't see those problems coming to us for 2 or 3 seasons at least with Kane. And yes, he is the best striker in the league because he's got the Golden Boot. I think he's got the Golden Boot this year, and he had it last year. So if it comes down to that, and that's the parameter for it, and it's not in a team that has won the league, so you have to say he's the best striker in the league.
And coming to you, Ian, question here from Zoe Pearson. You can do a yes or no on this one. Can thoughts of Son's inconsistency be dispelled after this season? 21 goals. What do you think, Ian? Yes or no?
Yeah, I think that can easily be dispelled, mate.
Yeah, completely agree on that one. And coming to you, John, again, do you want to elaborate on that, Ian's answer about Son? We've discussed him this season and discussed him tonight about how he has improved over the course of the season. We'd probably argue again, like we've said, that he would go into a side probably outside the top 6 and be a regular player. What do you think the future holds for him, John? Can we upgrade on a player of his ability and the goals he's providing, or are you happy with him?
I think, well, first of all, I'd like to give a shout out to Zoe Pearson, because for anyone who follows her on Twitter,
great artwork, brilliant artwork,
massively talented artist.
Yes,
she is fantastic. If anyone doesn't already follow Zoe Pearson, get on Twitter and have a look. She is amazing. But sorry, get back to the question. I think, like we said earlier, we've seen that second season progression with Son, and I think that if he goes on next season and does at least match it, then he becomes, one of those players who's impossible to drop. As I said earlier on, I think if you're talking about our strongest 11 at the start of the season, before Poch starts playing 3-4-3, then you're going 4-2-3-1, and Son's not there because you've got Dele, Lamela, and Eriksen behind Kane. And then it changes up again, and he plays 3-4-3, and the 3 forward players are Eriksen, Dele, and Kane. Injuries and changes and necessary changes in the team have dictated again that the formation had been changed, and we went back to 4-2-3-1. But Son's there, obviously. Lamela's injured, but Son retains his place in that formation too. Hopefully his season's not remembered for what happened at Wembley against Chelsea, because he shouldn't have been in that position. He's not the player that should have been playing there that day. But it's just one of them things and I think that he's definitely got scope to improve. He's still a relative baby, really, in terms of his footballing career. And you can't, he shouldn't be, same as Harry Kane, the same as a lot of our players. They're approaching world-class levels, and none of them have reached their peak ages yet.
Just on Sonny, when I hear about people saying we've got to go and sign this world-class players and that, we all know the positions that we're talking about, in those attacking midfield positions. And you look at Eden Hazard and you say there's a world-class player that he's definitely better on his day than Heung-min Son is. You wouldn't have any, if you had a choice to pick either of them, you'd pick Hazard over Heung-min Son. But there's Son, who's outperformed Hazard with goals and assists this year. So if you do go and bring a world-class player in, I think that the mistake that fans make is that they look at, say, an Eden Hazard type player, and they think there's an extra 20 goals that we'll get next year. You won't get an extra 20 goals if he's got to play when Son doesn't play, because you'll then lose Son's 20 goals. So to replace Son next year, you're talking about a player that's going to come in and score 26, 27 goals and get about 15, 16 assists. Yeah. And I can't see us bringing in a player in that's going to perform in that way, because if it is, they'll cost us 80, 90 million and they'll want 200 grand a week, and we just won't do that.
I agree. And sticking with you, Jay's got a question here from Lee at LJ Finn Clacton, who says, do you reckon we would have won the league if Harry Kane hadn't had those 2 injury spells, Jace? What do you think?
No, I don't think we would have done. I think, when you look at the second injury, and we won all 3 games when he was out anyway, didn't we? So I think we're pretty sure we won all 3. So there you go. You couldn't have improved on those 9 points. I think the earlier one where we had that run of, what was it, West Brom, Leicester, Bournemouth, I think Arsenal. I think they were the 4 games we drew in a row or something, weren't they? Arsenal Kane was back for, wasn't he? I think probably Toby's was as big a miss at that time as Kane was as well. And again, you look at that and you think, well, we drew those, so even if Kane had played and we won them, it's still only 6 points, and we're still a point behind Chelsea even then. So I think the big difference why we haven't won it this year is purely down to the fact that Chelsea had no European football.
I'm going to come back round to you, John. I've got a question here from Deshoff. Jovial question, this one. On a scale between Gareth Bale and Grzegorz Rasiak, where is Musa Sissoko sitting?
I would say just above Kazuyuki Toda, but just below Timothy Atuba.
Oh my god.
Listen, on a serious...
Has he got a future, John? Honestly though, has he got any kind of a future? I mean, I know it was awful. Listen, that Thursday night performance, I felt a lot of us kind of, our hearts went out to him, because you just, you've all been there, even when you've played whatever league, whatever level of football you've played, we'll be a kick about in the park and your first touch you think, oh my god. But I mean, it's just, you just feel so for him, don't you, at the moment?
I think the problem is, it's like I said earlier on, he's got 50 odd caps for France, he's a good footballer, but it just goes to show what how massive confidence is in professional football, and especially at the level we are at. If you're looking to be finishing in the Champions League places year upon year, and be a progressive, forward-thinking club, to have a player who's on whatever he's on who can't trap the ball. I feel for him. It's obviously a confidence issue.
I mean, this price tag is killing him, John, isn't it? And it's not fair on him, because no one, we didn't. No, he wasn't put a gun to his head, and we were made to pay it. Pochettino or whoever wanted to buy the player, but you got to say to the bloke, where is he gonna fit in, John? Even next season, I'm thinking, well, if we're gonna upgrade on this squad, then you got to be able to say he would be one of the players we got to upgrade on.
I think it depends on it. See, the 2 things that are important in the Musa Sissoko conundrum, shall we call it? One is, if the club were a little bit more transparent with what was actually paid, we might be a bit nearer to having a bit more empathy towards him, because we know that the club was still owed money for Andros Townsend and DeAndre Yedlin by Newcastle. We've also been told or heard rumours that it's £6 million a year over the course of 5 years. Now, we don't know whether that's still £6 million a year, 5 years, even if we sell him, or if we don't, we're no longer liable to pay that. And the second point is, it depends if a suitable bid comes in, because if a suitable bid comes in, he is definitely on his way, 100%. If a suitable bid does not arrive, then he'll be a Tottenham player next season. And to be perfectly honest, I wouldn't be upset about that. He can play football. He's a decent enough player. But the trouble he's got is he's relying on a hell of a lot of injuries or suspensions to get a decent run in that team, and that's clearly what the guy needs.
I think he probably came in with Pochettino having slight, because don't forget we went for Wijnaldum first, didn't we? I think Pochettino probably had him in mind as Dembele's backup player, if you like. With Champions League football, he thought, there's a bloke that's just come off the Euros that's capable of playing at a decent level. As I say, 50 odd French caps. I think that was the role for the side, and then the emergence of Harry Winks has kind of pushed him further down the line. Now, whilst he hasn't got a run of games, and we say that the others have, the big difference, in fairness to the others, is that when they've come in, they've grabbed their chance, just like Kane grabbed his chance 3 years ago, just like Dele Alli grabbed his chance. And that's the problem for Musa Sissoko, and we've seen Harry Winks come in and grab his chance, haven't we? We've seen Trippier do it, and yet Musa Sissoko, when he's had the opportunity this year, I think, other than, he had those 2 games, didn't he, back-to-back, I think, against Hull and Burnley in December. Yeah. But, with Winks, the emergence has pushed him further down the line, and I definitely think that he'll be on his way come the summer anyway. But that's the way it goes.
Yeah, unfortunately that is the case. We're going to roll it on, guys, to the Hull City preview, our final game of the season. I'm just looking obviously at the table, and Hull obviously are down, relegated as such now. Again, coming to you, John, another game where we're going to go into it. Both teams potentially on the beach, but a real chance for Spurs to finish really strong and again record a record points total, John.
Yeah, I think if there was any doubts about the players being on the beach, then they were categorically answered against Leicester. I don't see that that's going to be an issue now. I think the fact that it's third game in a week right at the end of a really, really tough long season, I don't know, maybe tiredness might creep in, but then we've had enough sort of jigging about and changing of personnel in recent games, even if it's been only one or two. I think there's enough fresh legs in that squad. And you'd have to say, at any stage of the season, if you're going to Hull City, you're not going to lose. And I'd like to think that we won't on Sunday. I think that the difference is for Hull, it's their first game since they were confirmed as being relegated, so they are playing with absolute freedom. Marco Silva will still want to protect his pretty decent home record at Hull, but we really should have too much for Hull City, and I would expect a comfortable win.
Jace, another game where we will be red hot favourites, you would think. Hull already down. What kind of team do you see, Jace?
I don't think there'll be that many changes from the other night. I think Trippier will certainly probably come back. I think the concussion or whatever only rules you out for 5 days or something like that. So I imagine he'll come back in, and then that will probably allow Moussa Dembele to drop down, and quite possibly we'll see Eric Dyer go in there and be interesting to see if Ericsson gets a place back in the side. Wouldn't that be strange to see Ericsson left out through? You can't believe it, can you? But I think the players will be mindful that they went to a relegated side last year on the last day and lost 5-1. They know how angry Pochettino was from that, so I certainly don't see any let up, and I fully expect us to go there and dismantle Hull in the same way that we did, well, not necessarily to win it by 6, but the tempo of the performance and the style of the performance and the dominance of the performance, I think, will be the same. But it would be nice, wouldn't it, for the travelling fans, if Ryan Mason was to come out on the pitch before the game. I don't know, there was a few interviews with Ryan, wasn't there, last week, so it would just be brilliant to see him at that game, and also to give Dawes a proper reception, because it probably the likelihood is it will be his last ever Premier League game as well. So nice to see one or two of the old boys as well.
Okay, well, let's try and get some predictions going. Ian, we'll come to you first. Prediction, Ian, for the game?
3-0 Spurs.
3-0 Spurs, there you go, nice and confident. 3-0 Spurs. John, what are you going for?
Well, if I may, I'd just like to tell you what happened before we played Leicester on Thursday.
Go on then.
For about 12 games on the trot a couple of years ago, I predicted we'd win 6-0. And Jason obviously hasn't forgotten this, and he sent me a message before we played Leicester saying, "Are you going for your normal 6-0? I replied to him, I'll be conservative and go 3-1. And it turned out that Jason's prediction was closer to what actually happened than my sensible prediction. I'm going for an away win, mate.
Away win. All right, John.
I'm going to go 2-0 to Tottenham.
Jason, coming to you. Prediction. What are you going for?
I'll take 3. I'll go 3-0.
3-0. Okay, fair enough. And guys,
Kane to score.
Okay, Kane to score 3-0. And finally, guys, before we close the show, this has been sprung on the guys very last minute. We've had a debate on this off air, and it's fair to say that the 4 names we're picking in terms of the e-Spurs player of the season has been debated here. So let's have the 4 that we have managed to choose, and believe me, it's been a tough choice. John, who have you gone for? Who's your nomination, firstly?
It's got to be Victor Wanyama for me, mate. He's been superb. He's been, since he come in, he's just been terrific, and he gets my vote without a doubt.
Okay, and I think, again, a lot of people, it's going to be a very hard one to argue. Jay's going to come to you next. Who is your nomination?
I'm going for Jan Vertonghen. I think he's been more or less the constant at the back. He's had different partners alongside him in Toby and Wimmer. He's had different goalkeepers behind him. He's had a different left back alongside him and wing back. And he's had, changes in midfield in front of him. And I think other than those 3 or 4 games he was out for, his form has been exemplary all year.
It really has been. And finally, again, it's controversial, this because we are missing out so many players. It's just unreal. That's how good the Spurs team has been this year. I'm going to have to go with Christian Eriksen. He has been phenomenal since the turn of the year. He really stepped up to the plate. He was the Spurs player of the season as well. So, like I say, it's just been a phenomenal run of form for him. That's not discounting, guys. Let's just add the likes of Dembele, who's been brilliant. Danny Rose, who's been absolutely phenomenal. Hugo Lloris, Toby Alderweireld. I mean, Dele Alli, Heung-min Son. We're not forgetting these guys, are we, Jace? They've been also brilliant.
It's just the best part of this season, isn't it? Because, you know, as we said, a couple of in Pochettino's first year when we conceded, 60-odd goals or whatever, and Hugo Lloris was still everybody's outstanding candidate for player of the season. And, you know, just look at the difference now.
Yeah, unbelievable. And John, any words there on the people that haven't made it? Because they've been brilliant this season, haven't they, John?
I think every member of this squad will go down in Spurs folklore, to be honest, especially within the Premier League era. And I'll love all of them forever for finishing above Arsenal. So they've all been heroes for me this season.
Ian's nomination, just in case it does sound like we've left someone out there, was Harry Kane. So Harry Kane, the fourth and final member of that claim. We will be putting out, guys, a poll on the e-Spurs Twitter account to decide who your e-Spurs player of the season is. Again, please don't shoot us for the guys we've left out. It has been a really tough choice. Jace, thank you as always for coming on the show.
No problem, mate. Back to bed now.
And John, thank you as always for coming on, pal. Been an absolute pleasure.
Lovely, mate. It's been good. I've enjoyed it.
Oh, brilliant. Been a pleasure having you. And Ian, like I said, unfortunately, we lost him to train travel. So, Ian, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, going into our final game of the season against Hull. Come on, you Spurs!
Like we did last year. Top